by alone inside. He's got the breakaway with the touch to the right. Goal! Everything you wanted from this debut. It's Brandon by. Taking a shot with the left. Goal! Isaac Friend from 25 yards out. The equalizer. Will Kidd with the touch of the goal. It's a go-ahead goal. Minneapolis City.
This is the People's Pitch Podcast, the official podcast of your Minneapolis City Soccer Club, brought to you by Summit Brewing Company.
What is up, soccer fans? This is the People's Pitch Podcast, the official podcast of your Minneapolis City Soccer Club. We are less than 1 month away from pulling a jersey over our heads and rolling out a ball for our first official match of the 2020 campaign. I'm your host, John, and joining me, as always, is my co-host, Nate. Nate, the warm weather came this past week, and it brought a nasty flu, but also an extreme case of soccer fever.
Was soccer fever real at your house?
I think it is.
An actual fever?
I think it's more of like when your kid has a fever and you make them watch soccer with you.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That could be worse.
It could be a lot worse, but definitely there's a sniff in the air that soccer's coming.
Totally. And there is so much soccer news happening here at Crow Quarters. We are playing a little catch up here on the show this week. So we know that the full NPSL roster has been announced for Minneapolis City, and it is surprisingly stocked with some new-ish faces for Crows fans to get to know. So a couple new faces, a couple sort of new faces, a couple new faces if you haven't been around a lot. So that's going to be cool. We'll go through all those guys. And then the NPSL schedule was announced recently. So we're going to look into the crystal ball, and we're going to see how different or really how basically the same the NPSL North could look this year. Could go either way, but I think you're I think you're going to kind of guess where we're going with that. We've had a couple of long shows in a row, so that's going to be it this week. We will commence the enjoyment. John, first thing, just today on the Twitter machine, did you see that Nashville SC announced that it has signed 4 of its super draft picks, including Minneapolis City player Luke Hawkinson?
I did. I actually got the news a little bit early. Luke texted me to let me know that he officially made the team and that throughout the preseason he was getting some decent minutes, and there is an opportunity where he'll be potentially getting at least a chance to fight for playing time in the 2020 season for the expansion Nashville FC. So congratulations to Luke. Super happy for him. Couldn't happen for a better guy, and it raises our profile, Nate.
Totally. That is very cool. I'm going to log into my MLS fantasy team and purchase him.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying he's going to be like a diamond in the rough just yet, but I mean, if you got a deep bench, you can stash him on there and then maybe scour the waiver wires, the injury reports, and see if he gets some minutes.
For those in the know, I got to use him as my switcheroo. You get a guy that's going to be super cheap that you know isn't going to play. And then you load your bench up with guys that you know will play. Mm-hmm. And that way you don't have to that way anyone on the bench that does well ends up in your starting lineup because they get switched out if they don't play.
Oh, nice. Well,
the switcheroo, they call it.
The old switcheroo.
Anyway, let's move on. So last week we covered off on some of those fan favorite players that are returning to the Crows, but our NPSL roster building was not done. The Crows have signed or called up a few more players to round out the team. So let's get to know them.
Yeah, to round out that initial roster that was kind of put out by the club this week, we have quite of a healthy dose of returners with names Crows fans should recognize, whether it be through guys that were on the first team last year or maybe some U23 names. But we also have what I feel the fans get excited for, and that are definitely the new players that are going to be coming into the club this year.
Yeah, I mean, the new players are always kind of what you look forward to because there is an air of mystery around it. Nobody, even though we love our guys, it would be hard to say we have the same roster as last year and have people get just as excited about the year. So,
right. It's like, hey, Will Kidd's back.
Yeah, like, oh yeah, well, okay, basically just 2018 part 3.
Right.
But given precedent of how the roster building has gone in years past, at least personally, my expectation was low that that many new players would end up making this NPSL team. I think we only lost. Sounds like we only lost really 4 players to retirement, as it were.
And
So
then Luke.
yeah, and then Luke. So I mean, that's 5 players lost is probably the most that I would say have rotated out Minneapolis City for a while. So it's only natural that they're going to get replaced by some new faces, and I'm into it, man. I'm here for it. But before we dive into those guys, I want to start off with some names that might be new to some, but the diehard fans are going to be well aware of that are joining the roster this year. And of course, the first name on that list is Shea Bottom. Shea was a huge name coming into the City fold 2 years ago. He was fresh off of his campaign as the Division III Men's Player of the Year, St. Thomas grad. He was in and out of trials at at MLS clubs, but nothing really stuck. And when he kind of started up with Minneapolis City, he really did have limited time in the actual City lineup. I know there was he had started a new job. He was working in Wisconsin, and it felt like this was going to be the second or third year in a row where we would have a heavily hyped player that did not quite pan out as expected. We announced him, but now he's back and he's ready to actually play.
Correct, Nate. Shea was a player that we were really high on for the past 2 seasons, but like you said, it took him a bit to kind of get into the roster full time. Like the trials you mentioned at the MLS and USL level. He also needed just some time away from the game to kind of hit reset. Or he had a busy day job working in IT on government contracts that he was finally able to have him, he was finally able to pay his bills, but it took his focus away from soccer. But, he had the opportunity to try soccer as a day job, and it just didn't work. And being able to pay his bills with a decent paying job out of school definitely took precedence. But now he's back in the Twin Cities, and I think previously having him in, he just never was really able to get enough time to get into a rhythm with his teammates to a point where the coaching staff kind of could count on him and feel comfortable. He did make his first appearance last season. But this season, I feel will be a totally different story where, he's the tall, powerful central player that we were so high on, that provides that calming presence in a midfield with his advanced ability from a passing perspective to the front three. He's a ball winner, in crowded spaces, and he keeps the ball when we have it. And I feel like we're probably going to get our first glimpse of him in a longer dose to see what he can do in a very important match for the club, and that's the U.S. Open Cup match in Chicago later next month. So
Shea is really going to slide in as a true midfielder for this team. It sounds like nothing too advanced, not really an Aiden O'Driscoll role or
like a hybrid,
like Luke Hawkinson last year, but not as deep sitting as Charlie Adams has been or Steve was in the past.
Well, actually, I would say he probably will be a little more deep sitting. He'll probably be doing a lot of what Ian Smith did with like playing alongside of Max Stegward instead of being more advanced, because we do have some different advanced options. We have a healthy Ruiz Plaza now. We have a couple different players, some that we'll talk about today, that can kind of slot in. You can always put Aiden in a more advanced attacking role. But I would see him as more of a deeper lying, more time on the ball type center midfielder.
All right. Well, next up, we've got a player who made the rise in 2019 from the U23 squad to provide a little bit of positional depth in the back. And we're talking about Mike Riley. He's a center back that plays for Loyola University down there in Chicago.
So Mike's been with us, I think it's going on 3 years now. He became he became a mainstay in the back for 2 years with the U23s, and really was the rock that I think helped them win a lot of games. He was very stable back there, and he was a constant back there. And as you know, at the center back position, you kind of need that cohesion between your center backs. He's grown leaps and bounds, finishing out his junior year at Loyola, firmly planting himself as a regular 90-minute player for a team that was really a heartbreaking goal away from making the Sweet 16 in the tournament last fall. Mike has everything that you want out of a center back. He's got size. He's got some advanced level speed for a center back. He's calm on the ball, but he also has a relationship. I think that it's important to note that he's been playing, with some of the players that have already been on the NPSL roster for throughout his youth ranks for quite a few years. So that learning curve will be limited, and he'll be able to I think fight immediately for playing time in an area on our roster in 2019 where we really did run into some of those oh shit moments due to injury at the back. So having some more positional depth, it's a little bit younger, I think is really crucial at the center back position.
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems like, we talk about Shea and some of these other guys that are coming up. Our roster is going to be heavy on central players that have come out of the MIAC. But specifically, this program at Gustavus is kicking out a number of really decent central midfielders. And I'm talking about Arthur Perrins joining the team as more of an advanced central mid, but also a hybrid winger. Out of Gustavus, Arthur's been with the team for a couple of years as well. But like I said, the MIAC has been kind to Minneapolis City.
Very kind. Yeah. You're totally correct. I think, Artie is in that long list of former Gustavus center midfielders, like you noted, that really started with Charlie Adams and then into Matt Murakami. And like those two players, I really feel like at this level, his skill sets actually translate a much better. And I'm not saying the next part of my statement with any slight to his positional strength in college, but I think he's actually much stronger playing in a more advanced attacking role rather than your typical central midfielder. So maybe even that attacking mid, but also on a wing. He's tough as nails, and he has incredible speed and a huge work rate, that really does his best work, I think, when he's on the ball and going at defenders, which will position himself well into being that versatile type player that the coaching staff can kind of deploy in a couple different ways depending upon matchups.
Always nice when you have that kind of a guy on your bench for adding some depth, because it's someone that you can utilize in different game plans and someone that the opposing coaches can't predict how you're going to use them quite as easily.
Yep.
When they see him. Next up, we're hoarding All-Americans lately, I think, from this region, especially from one school in particular. And the next player falls in that line. We've seen, if you follow the Minneapolis City Twitter, if you follow the U23 Twitter, you're going to see that player announcements from this college about this player are retweeted quite frequently every time he scores, and that is striker Ben Keller joining us again from Luther College. He was a brief call-up last year from the U23 squad, but played mostly with U23, and he's got some talent, right, John? It's going to be nice to have this guy around for a couple of years, hopefully.
Absolutely. I think what we're starting to see, Nate, is what we thought would happen when we looked into the crystal ball 3 years ago and decided to boot up the U23 setup in the club. We really needed a way to foster younger talent that we could organically move into the NPSL team instead of constantly having to scour the globe for Minnesota-based players whenever there was a need. So now we have a home for all of that talent, and we can move the guys through. And, we just talked about two specific guys that are getting elevated. And we've talked about a couple guys on the last show that are doing the same thing as well. But Ben's really put in the work and continued to grow while away at school. But this past year, I think he really hit the turbo button and was the focal point around an Elite 8 team at Luther College. And one that was really ride or die based off of his performances each match. Scores tons of goals. He's a huge target. He's 6'4". He does some of his best off the ball. He did some of his best work off the ball with his movement. And in our club, I think he's that type of striker that's constantly looking to find the partners in the attacking third, which is a little different from a striker, with that mentality where they want the ball to score every time, where he's scoring goals from a couple different types of ways, but also looking to get other players involved and setting up goal scoring opportunities. Which, if you've seen the system that Coach Van Benschoten likes to play, it's crucial that, with all that outside talent we have from an attacking perspective, that we have that guy linking up in the middle with that. We've lacked that big target striker, I think, for a couple years. And as a big guy, he can do it with his feet, but he also, since year one, when we had Andy Laurie, Ben now gives us that similar option in the air. And I think he's going to press for some significant minutes and score lots of goals if he continues on the course he was coming off of his fall performance at school.
Nice. And I think it's funny to your point, this kid is 6'4", and the fact that he's just making it up to the NPSL now speaks a lot for the kind of striking talent we've had on the team.
Mm-hmm.
But man, if you've got a big target guy like that in the middle, and you've got all the speed you need down the sides, with Will and Nick Hutner in the game, or
Oliver
or Mr. Oliver, exactly. Holy shit! Suddenly you've got a guy that can be that dual threat, able to lay the ball off to someone that is just as hungry for the goal as he is.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty great.
Well, and I mean, like I said, he's just willing to pass, which is hard to find out of a good striker. And that's only going to make our front three even better.
Absolutely. Jon, every year there are, you see the names of players lining up across from the Crows in the NPSL North Conference that try to make the jump to our team. That, you talk to me a little bit in private all the time about the guys that after games will come up to you and ask if there's a spot next year on Minneapolis City, things like that. And in the past, it was maybe more significant from a numbers perspective to have guys that have tried to come at us and join Minneapolis City. But this year, it seems like we've got one guy that the team has been focused on, and that is Mark Bokeen joining Minneapolis City from a former opponent of ours.
Correct. So Mark has played for both the Twin Stars before we joined the conference, and then most recently he played with BSLT, and he's one of the most dynamic players from an attacking perspective that we faced in the previous seasons. He's small but super powerful for his size, and he's lightning fast. But I think the real benefit of Mark is that he's a natural left-footed winger, which is something that we've lacked on our outsides. I mean, our only true real left-footed player that we've had was Mark Haight, who played in more of a defensive role, and you can tell that he was not really used to playing in a type of system that we have in the past, as it's very structured, and players around him are more inclined to move off the ball to get it back when they don't have it. And you could tell that from when he came into trial with us, and early on he did struggle a bit. And that was basically because, he was so used to being the guy that when he got the ball, people just watched him and he had to put his head down and beat a guy. And that's not necessarily a slight, because he can literally put his head down and just beat a guy and run at players. But within our formation, I think it'll really unlock what he's best at. And I think he's already started to close the gap that was quite the learning curve for him right away with us, into really showing what he can do in training. And I think that'll be what'll help him become a big asset for the 2020 team, because as soon as that gap's closed, he's just going to be flying down the wings.
I think it's interesting that this is the second player we've talked about in as many years to come out of the VSLT program, to come out of a couple other teams, the NPSL North, that feels like they've been uncoached,
mm-hmm.
right? Like they're showing up to Minneapolis City, just used to doing their own thing, and nobody's really tried to include them in any sort of system. And of course, the first guy I'm talking about was Zuhair.
Right.
Look how much Zuhair has thrived with a system around him, with some coaching, with the confidence that he doesn't have to do it all himself.
Right. I mean, and literally the first day that Mark came in, I talked to him afterwards, which I typically do when there's guys that come in from other NPSL teams, just to see how they like it, see what the differences are. And he was just like, man, it's like around here, I get the ball and people move, and I can pass the ball. He's like, before I just beat players and everyone watches me. I was like, yeah, well, you're going to see that a lot around here.
Welcome.
You're exactly. Yeah. Guys want you to give the ball back to them. It's a weird concept. I know.
That's pretty cool. So now we're going to be at the point in the roster where the names are going to be new to most fans of the club. And this, of course, includes me. And these guys that we're going to be talking about here shortly are brand new. And the first one is Jake Simons. It's Simons,
It's Simons,
right?
yes. So Jake's a
And who is Jake Simons?
So Jake is a player that was in and out of our U23 setup last year, mostly as a training player, but he did feature in a few matches toward the end of the season. He's a former Osseo Oriole, so that's cool. And he's kind of taken a bit of an under the radar path to us. Coming out of the MTA DA, he was a serious product that most universities at the highest level really wanted. But he chose to explore some professional options. He was exploring some things domestically and overseas once he got out of college, out of high school, excuse me. But for one reason or another, they just haven't panned out for him. And I think it was probably mostly due not to his ability by any means, but because he's very calm on the ball. He's a possession first central player. He's got an extremely talented shot from distance with both feet, goes into tackles super hard. And I think maybe what happened in his trials was maybe a bit of the wrong place, wrong time type situation at the higher levels, or maybe they saw his talent, but it wasn't right with what they were looking for. So he just actually came off of a trial with preseason with Sporting KC. And is likely the youngest player in the Crows this season, coming in as a 19-year-old. I think he maybe just turned 20, or he's going to be turning 20 shortly. So he'll have, I think, a little bit of an uphill battle to get minutes, because that's kind of where we have the most veteran presence, I think, is in the center midfield, and we have a lot of different types of center midfielders. But I would liken him to Aiden O'Driscoll, who, if you've seen Aiden play, you just can't count him out because of how the guy performs every time he's on the ball. And it's such a mirror image of what Aiden can do is with what Jake provides. So looking for some big things for him once he definitely settles in and fights for some playing time.
Have you had your eye on this guy for, like you said, he was kind of in and out of U23 last year, but how long have you had your eye on this guy to recruit him into Minneapolis?
Well, I mean, I knew of him coming out of MTA because he played with a lot of the guys that were on our U23 team, and he knows Matt Van Scoten very well. He knew Jeremy Handler very well. So like we all knew of him, but it was like a situation where it's like, he'd reach out. I'm in town now in between trials. Can I come to train? And we're like, absolutely, because you're going to make the training level higher. But it just never really worked out fully until we were going into this season, knowing that he did have some opportunities. He might actually have a couple others, but he's focusing more on us now than he was in the past.
Nice. All right. Next up, you have mentioned this player before to me, but outside of that, I would say most of the rest of the fans, and really myself, have no idea who this guy is. And that is Sam Thornton, a striker for Marquette University. He is a junior currently, but other than that, I know absolutely nothing about this kid.
Well,
who is Sam Thornton?
A real quick aside on Sam. He actually is a transfer from Gannon University, where one Andy Laurie went
no
to.
Way.
Yeah, so he started out at Gannon University before transferring to Marquette 2 years ago. So just a constant home for Gannon strikers. We are Minneapolis City.
Wow.
But every year, Nate, there's always a player that kind of sort of falls into our lap, and you do what you can to snap them up because they make your team better. And I think Sam is this year's version. He's a native of Rotherham, England, and he's
Rotherham United.
Yeah, and who until in the previous summers he wasn't really focused on Minnesota at all, but he had the opportunity to move to Edina through some personal connections, and just reached out and said.
And when you have the opportunity to move to Edina, John, you take it.
Absolutely. I mean, who wouldn't, right?
Doesn't matter where you're from.
He was like, let's knock down a perfectly good home and put up a monstrosity on a small lot in just outside of the city. No, so yeah, he had some personal connections And he's reached out to us and asked about the potential of playing in the summer. He heard good things about us, and he's going to be here. So he checks off the list of being a form of Minnesotan. Last summer, he played for the Green Bay Voyagers in the USL2 with former Crow Ian Smith, who when I talked to him about Sam, had nothing but rave reviews about this frontline man. He is, for lack of a better description, just a pure finisher. He's your typical British striker who will work his tail off up top, on and off the ball. He'll demand it, whether he's open or not. And then he just puts the ball in the back of the net. Before going down with a really bad groin injury last summer that required surgery and took away most of his junior year following the summer at Marquette, he was scoring goals at just under 2 a game for the Voyagers over the first 9 games. So, like I said,
that's disgusting.
The guy's a pure finisher. And the Voyagers played in a pretty difficult conference with the Michigan Bucks, with the Des Moines Menace. So that'll speak to a little bit about the defenses he was facing. He wasn't facing, the lacrosse areas of the world. He was facing some pretty serious talent in that conference. With that said, you can see why we like him. He offers something that we've missed since we lost Brandon McGarity in the front of the house, and just being able to find the net. And once I think he when he gets into camp and he fully gels with his running mates, we could really have a pickup for the club on our hands this summer that flew under the radar with other teams in our conference, but will really be a performer.
It's funny because in the past few years, we've kind of ruefully rolled our eyes when you talk about, a British striker that's played for another team in the conference, right? Like anytime we line up against a Kyle Farrar or someone like him, you're just like, God damn, these British
Andrew
guys,
Jenkins.
Andrew, yeah, exactly. Like you're just like these guys. I don't know what it is in the water or something, but they've got to figure it out. At least when it comes to the NPSL North. So I'm pretty excited to say that sounds like we've got our own.
We got one. Yeah, we went out to the shop window and picked one out. But it'll be like any new player coming in. Like we're a very welcoming group of individuals, both on and off the field. But until that a player comes in out of their comfort zone, living in a new city, they're going to have to get to know the lay of the land a little bit and get used to being away from home and being in a new city and then gelling with your teammates. So we hope that gap kind of closes as soon as Sam comes in, but really excited about what he can do based off of seeing him play. Playing against him, he scored against us when the U23s played the Voyagers in Green Bay. And I was able to watch a couple of his college games after he reached out to me, and he really does have what it takes.
All right. Well, next up, we seem to have also, from year to year, a player or two that are a referral from a current member of the team that may have slipped through the cracks or moved back home after a while away. And that is what I hear is the case with winger Mado Youssef.
Yeah.
He's a new guy that's joining us from Seattle University, which is, even I know that's a pretty good program.
Yeah, absolutely. Mito's a really good friend of current Crow Samuel Ruiz Plaza. And he introduced us to Mito during our open trial process. Mito is a native of Eden Prairie, who moved out west playing for, like you said, a very good Division I program in Seattle University for 4 years before taking a gap year and then returning home this winter to Minnesota. He's your typical outside striker, wing player that's always hungry to get the ball and is relentless going at defenders with the ball. And when or when we need to win it back, he's that guy who will fight like hell immediately to try to win back a ball that a defender got, which you see in a guy like Will Kidd or Nick Hutton. He's also another guy that, has that ever-going engine, which is good for an outside player. He'll score you effort goals or he'll set up effort goals with just pure determination, which is something that we've seen in our conference that's played against us that has been very successful. And that can be explained by his senior campaign stat line at Seattle. He played in 23 games, started 15, scored 5 goals, and had 5 assists. So he was producing, about every 3 games he was starting. So that's definitely something that you can't really shake a stick at, but truth be told, our outside striker and attacking role that room is pretty crowded. But I think Midu's the type of player that when he's flying high, it'll be really hard to keep him out of the lineup. And he'll be a great addition, I think, to put into a match when you're trying to chase that goal, because he just really offers that relentless determination, like I mentioned, to find the back of the net one way or the other, whether it's him or he's setting up one of his teammates.
Nice. Coming up next and rounding out this initial roster is center midfielder Franco Pretel. And he's another player that we may not know on paper much about, but from what I've heard, this is a real get for the Crows. When you guys announced him via Twitter, I think, what was it, you that texted, because I asked you who he was, and you texted me and you said that there's some website that has him rated as like a player that's worth, a couple $100,000 or something on the transfer market.
Yeah.
And we got him, for free.
Total steal.
I think it's interesting. A total steal. Just some Peruvian guy who's been hanging around Minneapolis that wanted to play soccer.
Right. Well, yeah, it was transfermarket.com.
That's right.
And it was funny too, because, after his paperwork came in, I sent the link to Dan, was like, so which one of us is paying the $300,000 transfer fee that this website is saying that he's worth? But no, Nate, you're right. Franco is absolutely the real deal. He most recently did play for VSLT 2 years ago, but didn't play for them or feature for them after that. He was the key cog, I think, in their stingy defense that allowed only 4 goals in their first 5 games 2 years ago before the Crows got a hold of them. And that was actually on a day where he was unavailable due to injury. And then that saw us hang 4 goals on them in the first 45 minutes. Franco's a guy that I say this with all honesty, is a player after my own heart, because he is your absolute traditional number 6, and that's what I am and what I will always be.
You love it.
I love it. So he's that stay-at-home ball winner, solely focused on keeping possession and orchestrating what he sees in front of him. And really, I think this type of player is what we've missed since Ian Smith left us 2 years ago. He comes from a very impressive background, growing up in a pro system in his native home of Peru, where he rose through the ranks and was playing in the country's first division by the age of 20, before moving to the U.S. and then ultimately getting latched on to Jon and the VSLT guys. He's not the guy that's going to jump out off the page at you, but he's that type of player that just does his job so well that you really feel it when he's not in the team sheet, which was evident in my VSLT example. I'm super excited to have him in the season, because that type of player can really be a difference maker when you're trying to be a contender for a title. He's currently, though, back in Peru sorting out some visa issues, but he'll be back in the country at the end of April, early May. He did feature in a couple off-season friendlies that we had with teams like the University of Minnesota club team as they prepared for the national championship. We rolled out a group of guys, and he was in it, and I was just like, wow, this guy's got it. But I really can't wait to get him in so he can start integrating with the squad.
And that is it for the NPSL announced roster, right, John? I mean, are we going to get any more surprises before the end of the year, or is pretty much up next our UPSL guys?
Well, I think there's one more familiar face that we won't mention that may be coming back into the fold that played with us in the past, but that's kind of TBD. But right now, this is your initial roster. I'm sure there may be some guys from a U23. A UPSL perspective that will make the jump and will get significant minutes throughout the year. But by and large, this is the core of who you're going to see running out for the Crows week in and week out.
I think that's a cool thing to note, that from this is it, and anyone else that you're going to see on the team is going to be elevated from our UPSL squad, who we will be talking about in the coming weeks, which is great. So you'll be able to get to know those guys as well. And if you're a member, you'll be able to get to see both teams with your player pass. So you get to know all these players eventually, everyone. Don't you worry.
And the show prep for the UPSL guys is always the hardest part of anything we do throughout the year, because it's so much stat building from colleges and
right, and so much new information, and like, what do you focus on, and what are what people want to hear about. We gotta kind of anticipate that. So
can't wait.
We'll plan for that. We'll get that out in the next couple of weeks. But one other thing I want to mention is you can kind of tell, at least I can tell, by looking at how we've been talking about these players, like who we've brought in to add depth and who we've brought in because it maybe feels like the coaches feel like there's a position up in the air. You know, once you get past the veteran, who really is going to take the reins at defensive center mid, right? Who really is going to step up to? It seems like you said, it sounds like we've got our wingers locked in pretty good, with a little bit of depth there. But who's going to step up and be our target man? Who's going to be our striker and our head goal scorer at that number 9 position? I think there's a lot of options, and it's just a matter of who's going to kind of shake out as the most successful, or pending injury, who's going to be the one that just stays healthy for the whole season.
Right, exactly. I mean, you look at our outside backs, the same thing. You look at our goalkeeper, you have Matt Elder, and then you have a guy like Troy who's coming off a really good college season. You just never know how it's going to shake out. But I think that we've talked about positional depth for 2 years now, and I think this is the first year where we truly have it. Where yes, you want to have cohesion, but you also want to ride the hot hand. And I think that we might have the opportunity to choose between a couple different hot hands, depending upon who's playing well at the time and what team we're facing. And that's a good transition into what we'd like to talk about next.
Yeah, man, it has been a minute since the full NPSL North schedule has been released. And John, we've been too busy to sink our teeth into it when you think about talking to Max, talking to Andy, going through some of the other signings. But here we are now with forks and knives in hand. So let's feast on some NPSL North speculation.
I love
speculation. So Minneapolis City is going to open the season on May 9th, and that's a road game. We travel to our old friend Jim Gada Stadium up in Moorhead to take on Dakota Fusion. This is a trip that has been really kind to the team in the past and should probably remain so, as Dakota has become the new heiress of the NPSL North. It sounds like an easy start to the season, John, as long as we can get a traveling team together.
Well, I don't think we're going to have a problem with getting a traveling team together, considering that we have 30 guys that are competing for 18 spots on the Open Cup roster currently. So I think we're going to be just fine this year with not having to make trips with 12 guys or whatever. But much like every season, I think we have no clue what the heck is going to go on and come out of the Fusion outside of their huge megabus and a handful of Belgiulji brothers. It seems to be like 100 of Belgiuljis running around the Fargo Moorhead area. But last season, they finished 6 out of 7 teams in the North and were the most disciplined team in the division. Take that for whatever you'd like to take it as. There were a lot of cards. I think there were high hopes for them in the league last year because they really were shifting to putting more time into local talent and training together prior to the season. And then I think everything fell off the table and they completely fell apart and are now the butt of everyone's joke as they fell to Eris, which won their first league game in whatever it is, 6+ years against them last season.
Yeah, but good for Eris.
Yeah, good for them.
Our home opener comes next, John, May 16th against Med City. And this is going to be a good early test for the Crows since, like us, this is going to be a Med City team that had been playing and practicing together more thanks to the U.S. Open Cup, right? Med City is in the same boat as we are. They've got an opening round game. They're playing against Des Moines. So they're going to have their roster together, hopefully, and they're going to have a little bit of experience with each other, where usually we have that kind of upper hand moving into the season. It's going to be 50-50 here when it comes to chemistry.
This one for sure, like you mentioned, is an early test because we know that Med City does a really great job of bringing in talent. And they do, have to do so earlier than most years because of that U.S. Open match date change. I do think, though, Nate, that we may see a few similar names on the team sheet for their first game in the Cup and in the league, but I think they're probably going to be deploying a lot of local guys for the first game until their full-time players are coming in because they do deploy more transplants, and that's something really hard to do for the U.S. Open Cup. But from a league perspective, they will bring in good talent. Every year, I think that they do their best from a soccer perspective later in the season as everything kind of gels for them. It's kind of been that way for the last 2 years. But they still have the same head coach that's a homer for, I think, the wrong system for the type of players they bring in. And in the past has shown to let them down when they go up against teams that play good soccer and know how to beat that system. But they will be on the top half of the league this year again, I believe, no doubt.
I always love a good Memorial Day road trip, and this year is no exception. We head to Milwaukee on May 23rd to welcome the Torrent into the league in our own special way. John, this will be our first trip back to the good land since the days of playing against Bavarians and Croatians. And I plan to make that. I plan to make this trip, and I plan to make it a good one.
Milwaukee is new to our conference this year, and for the most part has been a kind of a disappointing underperformer since joining the NPSL. I would say they clearly don't get the best local talent in a pure volume perspective, because that goes usually to our friends with the Bavarians. But they have seen that their club has deep pockets, and they've been able to bring in a really good coaching staff. I know that area well, and the people that they bring in to run the playing side of things is well traveled. So they're doing it right there. They were able to bring in some players. They are coming off of a stint in the league's attempt at a full pro arm in the Members Cup, which has to have done something for them as far as elevating their playing style, so that they're not finishing a disappointing 4th or 5th every year with all the effort they're putting into it.
Yeah.
But I think they'll be kind of a hard team to play against, just from a playing style perspective. There's no love lost between both the teams' leadership by any means, so that'll be fun. And I think that they play in a really cool area just outside of Milwaukee in a really nice stadium that's got some bars across the street. So I plan on being there fully cross-eyed with my friends and family from the area.
All right, cool. That'll be a great hang.
Yeah, absolutely.
Moving into the end of May, Saturday the 30th is an opportunity to lean into what I predict is going to be a solid points lead for our team, because Dakota comes to visit for the early season return leg. I'm going to say 2 out of the first 4 games against the Dakota Fusion squad is not a bad start to the season for us.
You're right. I mean, it is a good position for us, as we know that the league's not lost in the first 4 games, but it sure can, I think, be on the way to winning, especially because we're in a conference that has less teams this season. So really, I mean, regardless of who you're playing, each game really matters. It did in the past, but I think now more so than ever. And I think we've always drawn from a ticket perspective really well against Dakota at home. I think they've performed well against us when they hop on the mega bus and head into our friendly confines of Edor Nelson Field. But I think this could be, like you said, a chance for us to potentially maybe take an early lead in the division before we have to go up against who we're going to mention next.
Yeah, because it's going to get real again on June 5th. Duluth FC comes to town with, I think, a lot to prove this year after missing out on any postseason soccer last year. We know that they're always going to show up with a chip on their shoulder, but with 2 games against the Torrent and a trip to Med City in the first 4 weeks, Duluth could be in a couple of situations. They could be either feeling really confident about their start because, they've shown up well against the Torrent, or the Torrent might not have shown up as great against the NPSL as they had hoped. Or they could be super desperate for points, Duluth could, if the Torrent turns out to be a threat to, the upper echelon of this NPSL North, and Med City has their stuff together to start the season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. I think this is a different type of year for Duluth, both on and off the field. And if things don't go well in a hard start to the season that you mentioned, they're playing against some of the top half, or the perceived top half in our division, and then they get us. You could see them needing a result to stay on atop the division potentially. But also to stay relevant in the top half. I think you could definitely see that happening. Out for them this year is their head coach for the past 2 years, Joel Pearson, and in his former player, Sean Morgan. So
no way.
Yeah, so it'll be very interesting to see if this will be a case of them going back to their, I'm making air quotes for those of you who can't see me, their old ways.
The The donkey days?
Or if Morgan's going to look to put out a side that really tries to play ball. And I think if last year's recruiting is any indicator, I think that they had the horses to play really good soccer. But are they going to do that again? And if they do, will they? When the chips kind of go against someone has a style of play, and then they go into the coaching ranks, where there's smoke, there's usually fire, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that he'd be there. Like I said, like you said, it'd be interesting to see if they go back to donkey style soccer, or if he's going to try to elevate their play.
I mean, it's a real interesting hire. I mean, I know a lot of folks that know Sean really well, that played either with him or against him when he was at Scholastica, and he's been the Scholastica head assistant coach for the past 2 seasons. So he's been coaching in higher level soccer. So it will be interesting to see what they deploy out. But we're also talking about a guy who quit the team for whatever reason, disagreement with whatever was going on there last season, or sorry, the season 2 seasons ago, and it was a pretty public disagreement. And so it's interesting he's back in now, but I think he's seeing it as an opportunity maybe to make good on some things that happened in the past. But I don't necessarily just lean to the fact that they're going to go into just kicking the shit out of everyone. But I'll be interested to see what he can do as a head coach for higher level soccer for his first time out.
Yeah. Well, happily, after a trip to La Crosse on June 7th, we get our Duluth games out of the way almost right away, because we travel to the shores of Superior on the 13th. I would say not bad to get our chief rivals behind us with 3 games to go in the season.
Mm-hmm.
That feels like it's going to give us a good idea of where we stand in the conference and how we're going to want to play those last 3 games.
Well, it'll just mean that Justin Oliver is going to have to go off for 2 goals a little bit earlier in the year than he's used to.
Yeah, don't take so long to warm up this time.
I mean, maybe that's good for him. Who knows?
On June 20th, Aris is going to hit the return leg here. And while they have not had success in Minneapolis, it doesn't feel like we can expect this team to be the pushovers of years past anymore. Or can we? I mean, is this just a matter of Dakota dropped so far down last season that Aris was able to, get a couple nut shots in before going down with them? Or
I mean, I hear it every year from Greg in La Crosse of we're really putting an effort into it this year, and then they just still trot out the same type of situation. So you gotta take it with a grain of salt. Are they really going to do it this year? I know that he's no longer affiliated with Viterbo University, which was kind of their main source of players that weren't in high school. So there may be an opportunity for some more of those guys to kind of move over now that he's not involved with both. But I mean, with those guys, you never know. I mean, what can you expect to get from them? I thought that last year they had some nice looking younger players that were coming through their system, and they kind of figured it out for, a 2-3 stretch portion of the season where they picked up a couple draws and a win. So do I expect them to be a title contender by any means? No, but could they become a spoiler for some people who are getting caught in a bad day? Maybe. You never know.
Maybe. And then we're going to slide into the 4th of July weekend with a visit from the Torrent, which, again, is one of those weeks where it's going to have the potential to be a sneakily important game. As the new team, like we talked about, they are the wild card in the schedule. And this game is going to be anything from a nice way to spend the last days of the regular season, tuning up maybe some UPSL call-ups and getting ready for the playoffs. Or this could turn into a must-win scenario if we have to use this game to try to snag as many points as possible to keep us up in the stands above Duluth or Med City.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I could really position this any better than you did. I mean, despite the fact that it's a holiday weekend, I think that's where our depth is going to be put to the test, because we're not going to have the guys who are solely in town just to play soccer. We're going to run into those Minnesota problems we talk about, local-based player problems where it's a holiday weekend and guys want to go away. But I think that if we're at the point in the season where we're pushing for being one of the first, if not ever, NPSL team to win 3 straight conference titles, I think you're going to start seeing some of the guys sticking around instead of going to the lake on 4th of July.
Yeah, and it's going to get hard. It's hard kind of looking this far ahead this far into the crystal ball.
Right.
That's kind of why we're being a little, you got to be a little wishy-washy about it. But we really could have this thing locked up by the 4th of July weekend, or we could be really, it could be, what did you call it? Squeaky bum time.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, it's tough. I think, to piggyback off what you said, this year, I think more than the past 2 seasons, maybe even the past 3, we don't know what we're going to get from teams, right? Like you said, we could get, Duluth has a whole new, staff coming in. The Torn are a new team. Med City is going into new waters where they got to start building their team early. Can they? Are they gonna have a bunch of guys that are in for the Open Cup and expecting playing time when the regular season guys get there? Can they put it all together? Is Dakota gonna shit the bed again? Is Eris gonna be good? You just never know. You just don't know. So we're just gonna have to be on our toes for every single game.
And then finally, it wouldn't be the NPSL North schedule without the potential for some extremely late season drama. And that's going to come in the form of a season closing visit to Rochester to play Med City. This game, John, this could be for all the marbles. So want to make sure the fans are circling this on their calendars now and start scouting out Rochester tap rooms to hold that after party.
Well, I mean, if you play back 4 years ago and then 3 years ago, we've made this trip before to end the season. And both times we've gone in and rained on their parade. So when you close out the season for, 3 out of the last 5 years with the team, and I mean, we closed it out with them actually last year as well. So haven't we closed out our season with them every single season? But last year was kind of like a don't give a shit, get ready for the playoffs moment. And we kind of just went through the motions, and we probably could have done a better job of positioning ourselves in the playoffs if we would have taken it a little bit more seriously against them. But we did drop points to them and give them momentum into playing them in the playoffs. And then I believe, outside of their goalkeeper, Nate Levy, standing on his head for 90 minutes, really like walking all over them to go into the regional playoffs. But I think that this is an opportunity, like you said, to circle it on the calendar, because it could be a chance where say we don't perform and we are out of the playoff race, we could knock them out. Or it could be the chance for us to bring home that 3rd straight title.
Yeah. Amazing stuff. Well, that is it. Short but sweet.
Quick show.
Yeah, that is. Thanks as always to our show sponsor, Summit Brewing Company. St. Patrick's Day is on the horizon, and that means it is definitely my box season. Their classic take on a classic style that is easy drinking and packs a powerful punch is starting to pop up all around town. So if you see it at your liquor store or on tap at your favorite swig house, go ahead and swig it. Don't just stare at it. Swig it. Summit, a more meaningful brew since 1986. If giving back to the community means a lot to you, maybe it is time to give to the club that gives back. Minneapolis City is a 501c3 that provides a safe, reliable, and fun environment for young people to play the beautiful game. Look for us this off-season hosting. Right
yeah. I mean, I hate to interrupt the show close because it's difficult to get through. But is there ever going to be a time where we get through this thing without saying something that makes one of us the other person laugh? Don't stare at it. Swig it. Okay. Anyways, continue.
That's the American Psycho version of our close. Consider a tax-deductible donation to a True City-focused organization. One that allows us to be jackasses. It is never a bad time to become a Minneapolis City member. Make sure you're getting on board right now. It's $65. It's going to allow you to support the club and get some really cool stuff besides the exclusive membership scarf and the membership card that's going to get you 10% off at the club shop and deals on Summit, which is at our official game day bar. Palmer's, you get that vote on important club matters, including things like selecting membership board, and choosing some scarf and kit designs. Plus, that's 2 home seasons worth of soccer for only $65. Mm-hmm. That is all at Edor Nelson Field, which is a great facility. That's a really good deal. So visit mplscitysc.com and make it happen. Do you have anything you're going to want us to cover in the off season? It's your window's closing. Make sure you are sending us mail. It is easy. Hit us up on Twitter at The People's Pitch or through the email machine at mcscpodcast@gmail.com. All questions, comments, and concerns are welcome. And finally, as always, make sure to complain to the club at MPLS City SC on Twitter. And that does it for this week. Soccer is almost in full swing, so we will be back soon with news about our UPSL team, the U.S. Open Cup, and more.
You got hoofed.
You got hooked.
Don't sip it. Swig it.
Poster burning maple weeds, cradle major keys. Thinking back, I've been major since the minor league. So supreme, too much sauce off my olive NMDs. I could staple steez, bend the goat so I get the cheese. Never fall, rake them leaves and make sure every moment gets seized and everything I see.